There's a quiet kind of person who scrolls through social media but rarely leaves a trace. You might know them, or maybe you are one of them. They don't post selfies, don't update their profile pictures often, and sometimes you'd never know what they look like from their online presence at all. In a world obsessed with visibility, they seem to exist in the shadows. But behind this silence, behind this digital invisibility, lies a complex psychological story, one that reaches deep into the hidden layers of the self, the unconscious fears of exposure, and the fragile dance between identity and invisibility. Sigmund Freud might say that these people are not merely avoiding social media posts, they are protecting something sacred within themselves, the mystery of their inner world. If you've ever hesitated before sharing your face online, wondering what that act would mean, or if you've ever felt that posting a photo felt strangely invasive, this video is for you. Because this isn't just about technology or privacy, it's about the unconscious tension between our need to be seen and our fear of being known. Before we dive deeper, I want to invite you to join this space, a place where we explore the human mind, our hidden emotions, and the psychology that shapes who we are. If you feel connected to this kind of reflection, consider subscribing. Not out of obligation, but because here we speak about what usually goes unsaid, the silent stories behind human behavior. Now imagine for a moment what it means to post a photo of yourself. On the surface, it seems simple, an image, a smile, a moment captured. But Freud would ask, what does it represent unconsciously? Why do we crave to show our faces, our moments, our lives to an unseen audience? And why do some of us feel such resistance, such discomfort at the very idea? The act of posting a photo is, in essence, a form of exposure. It's a declaration, this is me, see me, recognize me. But the human psyche doesn't always feel safe with that exposure. For many, the act of being seen awakens ancient anxieties, fears of judgment, of misunderstanding, of being looked at too closely. Freud believed that the gaze of others could awaken powerful unconscious conflicts because being seen is never neutral. It touches something primitive in us, something that remembers the earliest moments of being watched by our parents, our peers, the world. For the person who avoids posting their photo, this might not be a conscious choice of rebellion or privacy. It might be something deeper, a quiet defense mechanism against the psychic pain of being objectified, or even against the feeling of losing control over how one is perceived. Freud might call this a reaction to the superego, that internalized voice of judgment that tells us how we should appear, how we should be loved, how we should be enough. And so, they retreat. They choose to exist not through the image, but through thought, observation, and presence in the shadows. While others chase likes and validation, they observe, they scroll, they think. They might even feel alienated by the whole ritual of posting, as if everyone else is playing a game they never agreed to join. But what if this withdrawal hides both strength and pain? What if, behind this digital silence, there's a profound struggle with visibility itself, a paradox between wanting to be known and fearing it deeply? Freud taught us that repression doesn't only hide sexual or aggressive impulses, it also hides our longing to be loved and accepted. For the person who never posts, perhaps this longing has been repressed too. Maybe somewhere in their past, being seen wasn't safe. Maybe they learned that attention led to criticism, that exposure invited pain, and so unconsciously they decided that the safest way to exist was invisibly. At this point, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt uncomfortable showing your face online? Have you ever deleted a photo after posting it because it suddenly felt wrong, too revealing, too vulnerable? Tell me in the comments, what goes through your mind when you think about sharing yourself publicly? You can even copy and paste this sentence if it helps you express it. Sometimes I feel like showing my face online feels too personal, like I'm giving away a part of myself. Your story matters, because every hidden feeling we bring to light loses a bit of its power. Freud would say that the face is not just an image, it's a mask, a social construction that mediates between our true self and the world. When someone refuses to post their photo, they are, in a sense, rejecting the mask. They are saying, "I don't want to play this game of appearances." But at the same time, this refusal can create a deeper conflict, because whether we like it or not, the need to be seen is one of the most primal human desires. Children crave their parents' gaze. They need it to build their sense of self. When a child is looked at with love, they feel real, grounded, valued. But when that gaze is absent, or when it carries criticism or indifference, the child learns that visibility equals danger. They learn that to be seen is to risk being hurt. These early experiences don't vanish. They live within us, shaping how we relate to others, and even how we relate to our image. So when someone avoids posting photos, part of them might still be that child, protecting themselves from an internalized gaze that once felt cruel or rejecting. Posting a photo could unconsciously feel like standing in front of that gaze again, vulnerable, exposed, and at risk of being judged. Yet there's another layer, a quieter one. Some people don't post because they feel no need to. They've transcended, perhaps, the compulsion to prove their existence through the lens of others. For them, invisibility is not fear, it's freedom. Freud might call this sublimation, the redirection of an instinctive drive into something higher, more meaningful. Instead of seeking validation through the image, they might seek it through thought, art, solitude, or inner work. This is where the psychology of non-posters becomes fascinating. They can represent two sides of the same coin, the wounded who hide and the awakened who have nothing to prove. Sometimes they are both, in different moments, at different depths of their own consciousness. But what does this mean for our generation? A generation that equates visibility with existence. What happens to those who choose silence in a world that demands constant display? Are they disappearing, or are they reclaiming something sacred? There's a strange paradox in modern life. We share everything, yet we rarely feel truly seen. We post faces, smiles, moments, carefully chosen fragments of our lives, and still, deep inside, something remains untouched. That untouched part, the silent, observing self, is where Freud would tell us to look if we want to understand why some people never post their photos. Because in the end, this is not about technology or social networks. It's about the eternal human struggle between the mask and the soul. Freud often said that our behavior is never accidental. Every small act or omission carries an unconscious motive. So when someone chooses not to show their face online, it isn't just a random preference. It's a communication from the depths. Sometimes it's a whisper of resistance. I don't want to be reduced to an image. Other times it's a whisper of pain. I don't trust the world with who I really am. Let's imagine a person. We'll call her Anna. Anna scrolls through social media every day. She sees her friends posting pictures, celebrations, filtered moments of happiness. But whenever she thinks of posting her own photo, something inside freezes. She opens her gallery, looks at herself, and feels a quiet unease. Her mind begins to speak in a language she doesn't fully understand. What will they think? Do I look strange? Why does this feel wrong? She closes the app and tells herself it's not important. But the truth is that small hesitation is a symptom of something larger, a deep, unconscious conflict about exposure, judgment, and self-image. Freud would say that Anna's hesitation might come from a clash between her ID, which desires connection and recognition, and her superego, which judges, criticizes, and demands perfection. Between those two forces lies the fragile ego, trying to maintain balance. When the superego's voice is too harsh, echoing the inner critic she inherited from parents, teachers, or past experiences. The ego retreats. Posting a photo then becomes dangerous, almost like offering oneself for punishment. And so Anna, like many others, remains unseen. She participates invisibly, watching others through the safety of distance. In her invisibility, there's both comfort and sadness, comfort in control, sadness in separation. She feels unseen, not because no one is looking, but because she herself has decided not to show. There's also a question of identity. Freud believed that identity is not fixed, but fluid, shaped by both conscious desire and unconscious fantasy. In the realm of social media, we craft idealized versions of ourselves, digital selves that often differ from the private, authentic one. For some, this split between the online self and the inner self becomes unbearable. They feel that posting a photo would betray their real identity, forcing them into a performance they no longer believe in. It's not that they reject connection, they reject illusion. They refuse to participate in the theater of perfection. Their silence is, in a way, a rebellion, not just against the culture of exposure, but against the false self they're expected to maintain. Freud might have called this a revolt of the ego against the collective neurosis of the time, a neurosis built on the constant need to be admired. But there's another dimension to this. The refusal to post can also hide a more subtle form of narcissism, not the loud, self-obsessed kind, but a quiet, self-contained one. Freud described narcissism as the love we direct toward our own image. Some people who don't post their photos aren't rejecting visibility because they hate themselves, but because they revere their privacy, their mystery. They find power in withholding. In a culture where everyone exposes everything, their silence becomes a form of superiority, even pride. It's as if they're saying, "You may see me, but only on my terms." And yet, even that pride reveals a human truth, the need to control how we are perceived. Freud would see this as the ego's attempt to manage the anxiety of the gaze. Because the gaze, the act of being looked at, is never neutral. It awakens the unconscious fear of being objectified, misunderstood, or even annihilated. To be looked at is to surrender control. It's to risk becoming someone else's fantasy. That's why, for many, not posting a photo isn't just about privacy. It's about self-preservation. It's a way of keeping their identity intact, away from the projections of others. In Freud's terms, it's a defense against the invasion of the external world into the fragile realm of the inner self. But this defense has a cost. By hiding, we protect ourselves, but we also limit our connections. The paradox of the digital age is that we crave intimacy while hiding behind screens. Those who never show themselves might feel safe, but they might also feel invisible, forgotten, or misunderstood. Their invisibility can slowly become isolation. Still, Freud would remind us that repression is not permanent. What is repressed always seeks expression. The need to be seen doesn't disappear just because we hide it. It finds other ways to emerge, through writing, creativity, or even the longing for someone who can see us beyond the image. Maybe that's why, deep down, the person who never posts still checks who viewed their story, who liked their comment, who noticed their silence. They are not indifferent. They are watching, waiting for a kind of recognition that doesn't depend on a face, a photo, or a perfect angle, but on understanding. There's a beautiful irony here. In refusing to post, these people often reveal more about their inner world than those who share constantly. Their silence speaks. It says, "I am here, but not for show." It's an unconscious demand for a different kind of attention, one that looks deeper than appearances. If you've ever felt this way, caught between wanting to be seen and wanting to disappear, know that you're not alone. Many of us carry the same conflict, shaped by early experiences with love, judgment, and visibility. Tell me, if you feel comfortable, what does being seen mean to you? Is it comforting, frightening, or both? You can write your own reflection or simply share this sentence to begin. Sometimes I want to be seen, but I'm afraid of what people will see. Because awareness begins when we name what's hidden. Freud would say that healing comes from making the unconscious conscious. So maybe, for those who never post their photos, the goal isn't to force visibility, but to understand what invisibility protects. What part of themselves is so precious, so vulnerable, that it can't be shown to the world? What pain does the mask defend against? There's no single answer. For some, invisibility protects self-esteem. For others, it shields an inner world too rich to be reduced to pixels. For a few, it's a quiet form of resistance, a refusal to let technology define what it means to exist. Whatever the reason, it all circles back to one essential human truth: the desire to be both safe and seen, to be recognized without being exposed. In Freud's language, that's the eternal struggle between eros and thanatos, between the life drive that seeks connection and the death drive that seeks withdrawal, rest, invisibility. The person who never posts their photo is living in that tension, balancing between the urge to reach out and the fear of losing themselves in the process. Sometimes, not posting is not a lack of confidence, but a deep intuition. An instinct to protect the sacred core of the self from the noise of the crowd. It's not always pathology, sometimes it's wisdom. Imagine standing before a mirror. For most of us, this moment feels simple. We recognize ourselves. But in Freud's and later Lacan's ideas, the mirror is not a neutral object. It's the first time the human being meets its reflection and feels the shock of identity. The mirror tells us who we are, but also who we are not. It creates the illusion of unity, of coherence, when in truth the self is fragmented, complex, and divided. Social media, in many ways, is the new mirror of the modern world. Every selfie, every post, every curated image is a reflection we show to others and to ourselves, hoping it will tell us who we are. So when someone refuses to post their photo, what they're rejecting is not just the gaze of others, but the very mirror itself. They are refusing to enter that symbolic arena where the self becomes an image, where identity turns into performance. Freud might say they are resisting the ideal ego, the perfected image we all try to project, the one we secretly hope others will admire. But here's the paradox. While they resist the mirror, they can't escape it entirely. The human need to be seen is not something we can erase. It is woven into our psyche. We all want to exist in someone's eyes, to be seen without distortion, to be known without judgment. The person who never posts might seem detached from this need, but inside, the desire is still there, only buried, repressed, transformed. It might appear as longing, nostalgia, or even quiet resentment toward those who seem so comfortable being visible. There's often a deep melancholy in people who hide. They live with the constant tension between craving connection and protecting themselves from it. Freud might call this ambivalence, the simultaneous presence of love and fear toward the same object. The digital world amplifies this ambivalence. We want to reach out, but we fear the consequences of being seen. We want to belong, but not to be consumed. We want to be authentic, but we fear that authenticity will not be enough. When we understand this, the psychology of those who don't post photos becomes a mirror for all of us. Because even those who post constantly are playing the same game. They're just expressing the same need in the opposite direction. The one who posts seeks reassurance through visibility. The one who hides seeks reassurance through control. Both are searching for safety, love, and meaning in a world that often confuses attention with affection. And perhaps that's the real tragedy of our digital era. We've replaced intimacy with exposure. We think that being visible means being known, but in truth, visibility without understanding only deepens the loneliness. Freud warned that civilization demands we repress much of what is instinctive and authentic in us. Maybe social media is one of the newest forms of that repression, a space where we perform joy, beauty, and confidence while concealing doubt, shame, and fear. So those who remain invisible are, in a strange way, preserving something authentic. Their refusal to post becomes a refusal to lie. Still, total invisibility can also become a prison, because healing doesn't come from hiding forever. It comes from finding safe ways to be seen, not by everyone, but by someone, to be looked at without fear, to be known without disguise, to be recognized not as a profile, but as a person. Freud believed that what heals the mind is not perfection, but understanding. To understand why we hide, to name what we fear, is to loosen the grip of that fear. So if you are someone who rarely or never posts your photo, ask yourself gently, what does my invisibility protect? What am I afraid will happen if I am seen? And what part of me is longing quietly to be recognized? These questions are not meant to push you to change, but to awaken awareness. Because awareness itself is transformation. There is beauty in mystery, but there is also healing in connection. The secret is to find a balance, to allow yourself to be seen in ways that feel real, safe, and true. Maybe not to the world, but to the few who can hold your truth without judgment. Freud would say that love, in its purest form, is the moment when the ego allows itself to dissolve in the gaze of another, not to disappear, but to become more whole. And perhaps that is what the digital world makes us forget, that the purpose of showing ourselves is not to prove our worth, but to share our humanity. The photo, the post, the story, they are not ends in themselves. They are attempts to bridge the infinite space between one soul and another. When someone refuses to post, they remind us of the sacredness of that space. They remind us that our image is not our essence, that we exist even when unseen, that the most real parts of us are the ones no camera can capture. But even so, Freud would whisper, beware of the walls you build around your vulnerability, because the same walls that keep out pain also keep out love. Hiding can feel like safety, but sometimes it's just a quiet form of loneliness. There comes a time when the psyche no longer wants protection. It wants contact. It wants to be felt, to be acknowledged, to be seen not as perfect, but as human. So maybe the real question is not whether to post or not to post, but whether you can face your reflection, not the digital one, but the inner one, without flinching. Can you look at yourself with the same compassion you offer to others? Can you recognize that behind every hesitation there's a story, a memory, an emotion that deserves to be understood instead of judged? Because the truth is, the psychology of people who don't post their photos is, in some way, the psychology of all of us. We all hide parts of ourselves. We all wear masks, both online and offline. We all long to be seen and fear it at the same time. We all curate what the world gets to see, not because we are fake, but because we are fragile, because deep inside we are still that child who once looked for the gaze of love and found judgment instead. And maybe, in a strange and beautiful way, those who stay invisible are holding a mirror for the rest of us, reminding us that authenticity is not in what we show, but in what we dare to feel. If you've watched this far, thank you. Thank you for being here, in this quiet corner of the internet, where we explore the soul behind behavior. If these reflections resonated with you, consider subscribing. Not for numbers or algorithms, but so we can continue walking together through these psychological landscapes that shape our lives. And before you go, I want to leave you with one last thought. Being seen is not about exposure, it's about presence. It's about allowing someone, even just one person, to see the truth of who you are, without performance, without fear. Whether you show your face or not, your story, your mind, your presence, they are already enough. In the end, Freud would say that the journey of the self is not about becoming visible, but about becoming whole. And sometimes, the most invisible people are the ones most deeply in touch with their inner world, quietly transforming, quietly alive, waiting for the moment when being seen no longer feels like a threat, but like coming home.